Okay, so today's project is brakes. My daughter has just turned 16 and she is going to get the 2007 Honda Pilot to drive around. It's got 200,000+ miles on it. We'll see how long she lasts. But the brakes are squealing. I've changed the brakes a few times. This time I think I'm going to change out the rotors and pads as well so she gets a smoother ride as a first-time driver. So let's heat up this garage and get out. 15 degrees outside, so if I can get 55 with this hot dog, I'll be pretty happy. All right, it's starting to get toasty in here. I'm gonna show you what I'm doing on this side of the car, but I'll be repeating the process on the other side as well. I highly recommend using an impact wrench if you've got one, but to loosen the lug nuts, you should at least have a breaker bar so you don't pull a muscle in your back. I do not actually have a 19mm impact socket, so I will be using what I've got here, but hopefully I don't crack it. I'm going to jack up the car at this location underneath the front bumper. I'll put some rags down. I just hate scratching when I'm lifting. And then I'll use the 2 jack points on the sides for the jack stands while I'm doing the brake job. Let's do it. All right, I've jacked it up just high enough to slide in my jack stands. And this is how I'll be working on the car. One on each side. Next thing we're going to do is we are going to take the bottom caliper pin out, and we'll loosen the upper one as well. All right, I'm using a 14mm socket to remove the pins that hold the brake pads on. No, I'm not. On the passenger side, you're going to use a 12mm to loosen those caliper pins. I'm going to use a hammer to try and crack this thing loose so I can get the brake pads up. I'm going to remove the top pin, and what I like to do is I like to use a dry cleaner hanger or something to suspend this thing. I just don't want to remove this caliper, but I don't want to put too much strain on the brake line. All right, so I've got the caliper hung up using a hanger on these coil spring. Caliper removed. I'm just going to use a screwdriver to pop these brake pads out, and we'll take a look at how they look. All right, so a little bit of tapping. The old pads are out, definitely down to the wear bar, but I am pulling them out before we ran out of pad, which is good. All right, now we're going to remove these caliper brackets. All right, and with the caliper bracket removed, we can start working on the rotor. Caliper and disc pads removed. In order to get the rotor off, now we just have to remove 2 Phillips screws. I'm going to use an impact with a fat Phillips head. Piece of cake. All right, with those screws removed, I've got a rubber mallet, a lead-filled rubber mallet. We're going to try and loosen up this rotor. All There she is. All right, let's clean things up with a wire brush. All right, now, while cleaning up the wheel in order to put the new rotor on and brakes, I found a little bonus project in here. All right, what you see here, this is my right front stabilizer bar link. Looks like it's okay at the top, but completely dislocated from the stabilizer bar down below. So, while we are fixing the wheel and working on the brakes, we will go ahead and check both sides of the car, and we'll get this stabilizer bar linkage replaced. Okay, I had a slight detour from the brake project for a second, but we are back at it. My new linkages are installed, and now I'm just going to clean up this hub a little bit before I start putting the new rotors on. All right. It's in pretty good shape. A little bit of wire brush on this edge here, so I can kind of get this on a little easier. I might hit this with a little Rust-Oleum. Or not Rust-Oleum. I'm gonna throw some grease on here, just to kind of keep the rust away. It's an old one, but a little grease will protect it a little bit. This is probably the last rotor this car will get, but if I ever need to take it apart again, it's always a little easier if there's a little grease on here. All right, so there are two screws, one here and one here, that hold this rotor on. So I'm gonna try and line those up if I can. Let's see. Looks like it's gonna go like this. Got one. Now I'll back it in first so I don't cross thread it. All right. Here's the first one. All right, now before I put this bracket back on, I do see this one slides a little rough. However, on this side, this one's not moving. Oh, that's not moving at all. So I am going to pull these slides out and try and keep the boot in good shape, and re-grease these things. Yeah, this should be sliding and it's not, so I'm gonna try and take that apart. Okay, so using a vice grips, I pulled out that slide that wouldn't really move well, and I have to say I've never seen this before. A tip of that slider is inside caliper, and I'm gonna need to pull it out. All right, so now you can see that piece of metal that's inside the caliper, and I am gonna use a little picking tool to try and fish that thing out. But I'm gonna need 2 hands, so I will report back. All right, so I got that piece out of there, and it was actually a small piece of rubber. So I'm wondering if I can clean this, and this is actually supposed to be on the tip. So I'm gonna do a little research, and I'll follow up. All right, well, looking online at a diagram of a 2007 Honda Pilot front caliper set, it looks like that is the lock pin and what's called a bush. So, and then number 11, that's the slider that's actually functioning well. That's called the guide pin. So it looks like this is actually the way it's supposed to look. There's nothing broken. So I am going to try and clean out that caliper. There is some rust inside it where the lock pin 18 slides in. So I'm going to clean that all out. If I can get these pins sliding properly, then I'll use the same parts and then reassemble the caliper. So I'm going to put a little PB blaster inside here. And I'm just going to let it soak. Let that soak a little bit, and I'm going to use a little, I've got a little metal pipe cleaner, and I'm gonna, while it's soaking, I'm gonna try and loosen up some of that rust that got in there. Put a little more in there. I bet I can use this thing if I clean it up good. I'm gonna let this soak for about an hour, and then we'll clean it all out and see if I can get that slide working again. Might as well do both of them. Get them all cleaned out. All right, that one wasn't as bad, but all right, I'm gonna let these soak. We'll let that soak for about an hour. All right, so now I'm going to very generously put some caliper grease all over these pins and slide them back in. I've cleaned them, I've cleaned the caliper insides, and I'm just gonna grease these pins and put them back in and make sure that they slide nicely. All right, so we've got the sliders greased, and they slide very nicely. I gotta get the air out of this one. All right, I'm ready to put the caliper back on. And before I do so, I'm just going to put some anti-seize on the hardware. So when next time I need to look at the brakes, it's no problem. Get the hardware off. All right, we're installing the new brakes, so we're going to start with the clips, top and bottom. All right, once the clips are in place, we are going to put some brake grease on this, on the clip, so that the brake does slide nicely in it, top and bottom. We will also put some grease on this little tab that sits in that clip. This one goes on the rear, as it's a little more reinforced to where the piston will hit it. All right. I have to take a closer look. There we go. Best way to do this is to get it in the bottom one. Nice. Oh, there we go. All right. Next, we'll put on our spring clips. Putting on the clips, these are just to try and push these brakes open so they're not rubbing on the disc. Just like that. Now I am going to put some grease on both sides where the piston will be hitting it. We're now ready. We are now ready for the piston. I'll get my hanger disconnected. I did a nice job. And we'll very carefully. Now, it looks like with new rotors and new brakes, I gotta push that piston in more. I'm gonna put my hanger back on. Get my C-clamp, and we'll push that in a little more. There we go. Perfect. A little anti-seize. Move this guy up into position. All right. Back it in first so it clicks, then screw it by hand. Yep. Once you've got them all in, or once you've got both of them started, you want a 12 millimeter socket. I'm just going nice and not muscling it too much, just nice and snug, because this is these are the sliders. All right, this brake is reassembled. Again, I did the exact same thing on the opposite side for the left wheel. And now we can throw our wheels back on, and then we will execute the break-in procedure. All right, so this brake job is all wrapped up. The last thing to do, and you want to do this anytime you replace your rotors and your brake pads, is I'm going to take the car out for a spin. I'm going to speed up to 30, hit the brakes hard, down to 5, accelerate again, About 30 seconds later, hit the brakes hard again, slow down from 30 to 5. So what I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to heat up those brakes. The ceramic, it is a scorched ceramic, so it's a quick set, but again, anytime you get new brake pads, you want to break them in and do that 30, hit the brakes down to about 5 miles an hour pretty aggressively. And you want to do that 30 times in a row with about 30 seconds in between. Once you do that, you should have some pretty good matching brake pad to rotor on your wheels, and you should be in good shape. So that's it.